I was told 2 days in advance that Zelensky, the meeting was supposed to be in Ukraine just for him signing the papers. And Zelensky insisted upon going to the White House. And that was about 5 days in advance. And I was told basically that he wanted to confront Trump, and that the Europeans and the press and everybody feeling that they're all on his side, that he could embarrass Trump into having to support Ukraine.
They're really playing with fire here, and Keir Starmer
exactly. They're playing with fire. It's a cheap hustle.
Hey guys, just a quick heads up before we start the episode. I did want to let you know to expect a few bleeps here and there throughout the course of the episode. Not many, just a few. Mainly just F-bombs, so you're not really missing much. But to ensure that the show stays family-friendly, we did have to bleep out the profanity here and to also ensure that we don't run the risk of getting demonetized with this video. We had to take that course of action. But other than that, everything else is still intact. If you want to watch the uncensored version, that is up on my Substack. I'll have a link to that down below. You guys are in for a treat regardless. This has been my favorite episode to have ever recorded, ever. And I said ever twice because I meant it, and now I want to emphasize it. We talked a whole host of topics here. Of course, the main topic being the Ukraine war and stuff going on with Trump and Zelensky and the EU and Starmer and all that other jazz. But we also touched upon the Epstein files, the gold and silver markets, what's going on there, and if it ties into what's going on in the Ukraine war. And it appears that it might. But we also talked about Martin Armstrong's past, and so very interesting stuff. You're not going to want to miss this episode. You're going to want to watch it till the end. We went through so many different rabbit holes, and without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. You're watching Capital Cosm. Today's guest is an all-star panel by way of Martin Armstrong, Alex Krainer, and of course, Tom Luongo and his cigar. Guys, thank you so much for making I guess for you, Alex and Tom, we just had a podcast last week, but Martin, thank you for making the all-star panel. Super stoked to talk to you guys about the things that have transpired over the last several days. No shortage of news. Let's just dive right in, fellas. Martin, I'll kick it off with you. Over the last several days, we had this meeting between Trump and Zelensky. Obviously, it didn't go too well. I'm not going to play the clip. We've all seen the clips. But you were telling me off camera that this was all kind of planned. Can you explain to us what you mean by that?
I was told 2 days in advance that Zelensky, the meeting was supposed to be in Ukraine just for him signing the papers. And Zelensky insisted upon going to the White House. And that was about 5 days in advance. And I was told basically that he wanted to confront Trump, and that the Europeans and the press and everybody feeling that they're all on his side, that he could embarrass Trump into having to support Ukraine. And so that's why it was kind of a bit of a confrontation. I believe Mark Rubio has come out and confirmed that Zelensky insisted upon going to the White House about 5 days in advance. So it was never supposed to have been there. And so then on the weekend, you have all these meetings with the European leaders. And what are they saying? Oh, boots on the ground, et cetera, So, I mean, this has been, it's just part of the agenda that they need to create. It's whenever a government is in trouble, they just point to an external enemy, and Putin is that enemy. Honestly, the solution for Ukraine was the same solution for Yugoslavia. It broke up according to ethnic lines. Simple as that. The Minsk agreement was supposed to be, allowing the Donbass to vote for separation. I mean, Zelensky's outlawed their language, their religion. I mean, come on. I mean, if you did that in Canada, you said you can no longer speak French, I think you're going to see a civil war there too. You know, it's just, you don't do this kind of stuff. So I think this was all theater and was part of the agenda that they just need war. The economy's falling. The German economy has actually shrunk by at least 3%, maybe up to 5%. You know, you put people out of business first with the COVID, then the climate change, and then the sanctions on Russia. I mean, just look at a chart of the GDP of Germany. I mean, it's appalling. And that's supposed to be the cornerstone of Europe economically. I mean, it's not doing very well.
Martin, so just to add a little bit more color, during the entire meeting was an hour long. It didn't really devolve into a flame war up until the last 20 minutes. And it seemed to have been kicked off by J.D. Vance. Was J.D. in on it? Was he in on it with Zelensky, or was that just kind of, was it a tinderbox waiting to explode regardless?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, they knew what this was about. It wasn't necessary for him to come to the White House. It was all supposed to be done in Kiev. So they knew this was a setup. And that's why, look, usually if there's going to be some sort of a meeting, they don't necessarily always let the cameras in, maybe afterwards for a photo op. Right. They set up the cameras for the whole thing. I mean, you know, they wanted this. Okay, fine. This is what you want to do. And that's why Vance said you're trying to argue in front of the American people. They knew what this was about. And, you know, look, I mean, we had 2 employees in Ukraine, one in Kiev, one in Donetsk. They're both in Berlin now. Over 8 million people have fled the country, and none of the Ukrainians that I know even want to go back. So, you know, it's just really a disaster, and Zelensky won't have an election largely because he knows he would lose if there was actually a free election. He ran on peace. Just look it up. I mean, he promised peace. Yep. The death toll when he went in was only 13,000. I mean, now it's like over 1.1 million. And he has the audacity to say he doesn't want a ceasefire. He doesn't give 2 shits about the people that are there. I mean, it's simple as that, really. I mean, you know, the first obligation of any government is to avoid war. You don't want to see your people slaughtered. And I mean, it's just not right with him. It's just not.
Yeah, I have a clip here that I want to share with you guys. This is it goes exactly to what you're saying here, Martin. So on one side, on the left-hand side, you have Ukrainians in Ukraine demanding that their husbands and children be released. On the right-hand side, you have Ukrainians in New York demanding more funding to Ukraine.
Yeah. Well, give them a gun and go tell them to go back to their country.
Yeah. So there's a huge contrast between the 2 groups there. Too much to what you were saying. The people who have skin in the game don't want the war to continue.
No, I mean, look, I mean, I've spoken with people there in Ukraine, and to put it bluntly, they said if Zelensky was on fire, they wouldn't urinate on him until he was dead.
My dad was
look, he's kidnapping young boys off the street and sending them to the front lines. I mean, I've been sent videos. I put it on my blog that they even sent people with Down syndrome and didn't give them a gun and said, well, get one during the battle. I mean, you know, I mean, it's just unbelievable. This is just how much money can I make out of this? This has got nothing. He's been bought and paid for. I mean, you're not certainly representing the people of Ukraine.
Yeah. I want to shift over to Tom's take here. Tom, feel free to respond
Sure.
to anything Martin alluded to. But before we get into that, I want to show you Zelensky's response after that meeting. He went to go meet with all these European leaders, and they did this photo op. This is this. I think this happened on Saturday or yesterday, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that was that. And then he also met with Keir Starmer, who had a few choice words in a speech.
First, we will keep the military aid flowing and keep increasing the economic pressure on Russia to strengthen Ukraine now. Second, we agree that any lasting peace must ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and security, and Ukraine must be at the table. Third, in the event of a peace deal, we will keep boosting Ukraine's own defensive capability to deter any future invasion. Fourth, we will go further to develop a coalition of the willing to defend a deal in Ukraine and to guarantee peace. Not every nation will feel able to contribute, but that can't mean that we sit back. Instead, those willing will intensify planning now with real urgency. The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air, together with others. Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing. We're working with the US on this point after my meeting with President Trump last week. And let me be clear, we agree with the President on the urgent need for a durable peace. Now, we need to deliver together. Finally, we agree that leaders will meet again very soon to keep the pace behind these actions and to keep working towards this shared plan. We are at a crossroads in history today. This is not a moment for more talk. It's time to act, time to step up and lead. And
All right, that's enough of that. Tom, what do you make of Keir Starmer's comments here? He's basically alluding to the fact that they will send boots on the ground and they will have the U.S.'s backing. I mean, who is Keir Starmer to make these demands?
Well, he's the British Prime Minister. He's, this is now the third time they want us to bail them out of their adventures in Europe, and they did it. We had to do it in World War I. We had to do it in World War II, and we've been paying for their security for 80 years, and now they want to start World War III, and it's not going to. We're at this moment in time. He's absolutely right. This is a crossroads of history, and Europe must now stand on its own 2 feet. And it doesn't, as Martin pointed out, succinctly, they don't have the economy or the collateral or the supply chains or the industrial capacity. I was chatting with my partner in crime, Dexter White, this morning actually, and we were like, when he was looking at a presentation from Rheinmetall, for example, just talk about Germany, he's like, when I watch a presentation from a company and it looks like a first semester MBA student's business plan about how they're going to quadruple capacity, he's like, yeah, that's nice, that's cute. How are you going to do that? The reality is that, and I tweeted this out the other day when they started down this road, and I said, look, who are these people that they're going to ramp up this massive military industrial complex in Europe, spend 700 billion or more euros, more like 7 trillion euros is what they're going to have to spend. But how are they going to secure the supply chains for the commodities they need to build that when they've gone to war literally with everybody who could actually sell them any of the commodities that they actually need? Like, they're at war with Russia. They've literally pissed off the United States to the point where basically we're at war with them. Trump is going to tariff the crap out of them. The only thing they have left really is Mexico. They're losing the Sahel region of Africa. France is. Like, what are you going to do? It's all virtue signaling. As Martin pointed out earlier, they're broke. They don't know what else to do. So they're going to go to war. And what they're trying to create is a tripwire set of forces to shame the United States to come in and support their play. And I find it really interesting this morning. This is another point about Germany. Every day I follow the German-U.S. bond spread, the 10-year spread and the 2-year spread. Been watching it day in and day out for over 3 years now, waiting for that moment or multiple moments. And every time that spread starts to tighten, like Germans yields are much lower than American yields. When it starts to move quickly, it's usually because of some exogenous event. I'm waiting for that day when we're going to have the German yields start to really kick off. Today is one of those days. They have this big meeting over the weekend where they declare basically war on Russia. And the hope of the United States, the U.S. bond market is up and German bond yields are off 11 basis points. And they're off 11 basis points past Christine Lagarde's line in the sand, where she's been trying to defend about 2.3 to 2.5% on the German 10-year. And she's been doing this for years now. And that's the whole transmission protection instrument. You and I, we've all talked about this in the past. Martin, you haven't, I may have not have heard these talking points, but Alex has certainly heard this 1,000 times from me. So watching that really carefully, it's clear that the markets are beginning to understand what's happening. And to Martin's longstanding point that when the war finally begins, all the capital is going to flow into the United States. And look at what everything that Trump is doing. The gold visas, $5 million to buy citizenship, build your businesses over here, change the tax code, lower the corporate tax rate for American-based businesses. He's literally telling the world, they're going crazy. You can come here. We're going to create financial stability for you to invest and protect your money. And he's trying to do so ahead of the EU putting on massive capital controls. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 to 8 weeks, but it seems to me like this is the period where capital, as Martin has taught us over the years, capital moves first, and then the armies start to move, and you always watch capital beforehand. So that's what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing it at the margins, especially with bond spreads and especially with the currencies. And Lagarde has to now choose between the euro and German bond yields, and I don't think at some point she's not going to be able to play that game anymore because they're running out of other people's money to play that game, especially if the Bank of Japan decides to strengthen the yen and blow up the euro yen cross as well. So there's a lot going on here. And, again, just to make this point, when I do that analysis, when I do the cross-border, the cross market analysis along with the geopolitics, you can see it clearly starting to lay out, and we're getting into that capital flow moment. And maybe we may be getting very close to it. We've been waiting for this for years, but we may be closer to that than we've seen in quite a long time. Do you agree?
I can tell you the week before this, all I had was phone calls constantly. Most of our institutions in Europe now see this coming. They are moving capital out. This is why all the gold is leaving London and Switzerland. Wow. Mm-hmm. All right. Get it the hell out, because once as Tom has said, I mean, I've learned over the years, back in the 80s was the first time I came in contact with it, when a bank in Lebanon had found a ledger and they wrote down the Lebanese pound every day, and they asked me if I could create a model. I did, and what came out said the country was going to fall apart in 8 days. I thought there was something wrong with the data. And I told him, I said, I don't know, something's got to be wrong. And very calmly, he said, well, what currency would you recommend? I said, well, it says the Swiss franc. And 8 days later, the Civil War began. So then I realized, with other people as well, he didn't come to me for the forecast. He came to me for the timing. Mm. He already saw it. All right. That's why they even came to me and said, could you build a model? It wasn't when I said your country's going to fall apart in 8 days. Normally you would expect somebody to say, what are you, crazy? Whatever. Mm-hmm. But he just went, yeah, okay, fine. What currency's best? So I've seen this over the years. The SEC used our stuff for like 9/11. They were looking at who bought puts on the airlines a few days in advance, stuff like that.
Right.
They begin to realize that that's what happens. So we are already seeing, as Tom is saying, he's waiting for that moment. I'm already seeing the capital moving. All right. The gold moving. All right. Mm-hmm. Pretty much there's most likely there are people in Europe that have, understand what's going on. I've gotten, inside information or whatever about this debacle in Europe, and they're just getting the hell out. Japan, I think, just sold over 50 billion worth of euros, dumping European debt. You're going to see the same thing coming out of China when the numbers come out. It's, Europe can, beat the war drums all at once, but I don't see them as winning this, actually.
Alex, I want to get your take here on this as well. Feel free to respond to anything Martin and Tom have alluded to, as well as I want to get your thoughts on what Martin just brought up. Is, effectively gold and silver is being drained out of the LBMA in London. It's being brought into America. Is Trump in a way trying to create a fortress America by sucking out all of the gold? Because you're also hearing this out of various Swiss banks as well coming into the United States. Is all the gold trying to be sucked into the United States? And if so, what's the game plan there? And feel free to also respond to anything that was said in the last, since we started.
Well, how much time do we have?
As long as you guys want.
Owner of the driest wit in geopolitics, Mr. Alex Krainer.
What I see is Britain playing a cheap hustle, duping the United States. Okay, that's what I see. And so, what kind of blew me over last week is the discovery of this. Well, it wasn't the discovery. We knew that they signed a 100-year partnership agreement between Ukraine and Britain on the 16th of January, 4 days before Trump's inauguration. What we didn't know is that there was a secret appendix to it where Zelensky signed over basically the bulk or the best part of Ukraine's resource wealth over to the British interests. And that puts everything into a different perspective. And since you and I talked last week without Martin, but I think we talked about this, right?
Right. Yep, we did.
I found further evidence, Zelensky himself referring to the existence of a secret agreement. And one of the press releases that the British government published on their websites says that this agreement cements Britain as Ukraine's preferred partner in economic development and trade and blah, 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 blah. And that's nowhere in the real agreement. So obviously it's got to be written somewhere else and you can't find it. So it's the secret part. But then they have this problem. Zelensky, his term expired. So did Starmer sign a deal with a private citizen? In that case, it's worthless. And then if Trump pulls out, they can't make this stick. So this is why they absolutely desperately need Trump and the United States to provide security guarantees for Ukraine. Okay. It seems to me that the rare earths agreement is a 3-card Monte. Because A, it's not even certain that this that these rare earths exist in areas under Ukraine's control in any feasibly exploitable amounts. So you see what they're trying to do is they're trying to dupe the Americans to do all the heavy lifting in Ukraine so that the Brits and the Europeans could scoop up the bulk of the best parts of Ukraine's wealth. And so I was like, is that what they're doing? That's just like a street hustler thing. That's like so stupid. And then, I found an interview that Boris Johnson did because, when things get shitty, they always send Boris Johnson. So Boris Johnson goes to Kiev and he flies into Kiev. I don't know when he came to Kiev, but Martin mentioned 5 days before Trump's arrival. Before Zelensky's arrival to the White House.
Right.
So that puts it at the 23rd February. Boris Johnson was in Kiev on the 24th, and he was already giving interviews from Kiev early morning. So most probably he flew in on the 23rd or maybe even 22nd.
Yep.
Two things happened since Boris Johnson flew into Kiev. First, Zelensky reversed his rejection of the rare earths agreement. And the second thing that happened is that the Verkhovna Rada had the second vote on the resolution to extend Zelensky's presidential mandate so that he would be legitimate, right? Because the first time they took a vote, they said no, because Ukraine's constitution is clear. Can't extend presidential term one day beyond 5 days. Can't delay elections under any circumstances. So he's not legitimate. And so they had, in the 24 hours since Boris Johnson's arrival to Kiev, these two things happened. The Verkhovna Rada votes the right way, gets the right answer, right? And Zelensky says, like, oh, I guess after all, I'll sign the rare earths agreement. But I suspect, as Martin suggested, that it was a setup, that Zelensky went to New York deliberately to embarrass Trump and to not sign the agreement. Why? Because it's already signed over to the Brits. And there's nothing. And so then, okay, you got to see this interview, right? Because it lasts about 4 minutes. But what a load that Boris Johnson gave away. First, he says, I got to read this to you word for word because this is such incriminating evidence. Where are you? There you are. Okay, so he says, referring to the agreement, it commits the United States not only to future financing of Ukraine, but also to a free, sovereign, and secure Ukraine under Donald Trump, and that is not to be sneezed at. That's a very, very important commitment. And also, as it happens, it spells out in the agreement that Russia is the aggressor in this war. Notice, he seems to know what's in the agreement. How does he know that? Okay, later on, he goes on pretending that he doesn't know because the interviewer asks him, so do you think that now Trump government and Zelensky are coming closer to signing this agreement after all? And then Boris Johnson says, I don't know, I hope so, because there are all these versions of the agreement floating about. I wouldn't know. And then goes on to rattle off a whole bunch of provisions in the agreement that he knows are in there. Do you know or do you not know? So they must have huddled together and decided the strategy. Let's keep the Americans in. Let's lure them. Let's pretend that there's an agreement. Play for time. And you go there, but you make sure you don't sign anything, right? And then the typical, this I got to read also. He makes sure to take a contemptuous jab at, the victim of his hustle. So he goes, pretending how this is a great deal for the United States, but it's Ukrainians have got to pay up because the Americans are so greedy. So here's the quote word for word. It is a good deal for the United States as well, but then don't forget that we had to what we had to face in 1940-41 with the land lease deal. We had to give up a huge amount, bases in the Caribbean, the Newfoundland, Bermuda, and so on. We got a lot of rust bucket destroyers in exchange. and the UK taxpayer stopped paying back the United States for land lease in 2006. So, America has a history of demanding a price for its support. Do you see what he's doing?
Oh yeah, I see exactly what he's doing. And Alex, just to bring this up, you know what else is on Lend Lease? Britain's nukes. Britain's only got nuclear power because we lent them the subs and the missiles. So if that's too big a price for you to pay, we'll just bring them home. They're really playing with fire here, and Keir Starmer
exactly. They're playing with fire. It's a cheap hustle. He's obviously worked on the agreement with Zelensky. They obviously discussed the strategy. He's pretending that he doesn't know very much about it. He's just hoping that this is going to happen, and then he's pretending that the United States is exacting some kind of an extortionate agreement. But hey, we all know how the Americans are, the greedy bastards. And then he says, like, well, from where I stand, it's still a good deal, because if the deal is not signed, then if the Americans don't provide security guarantees, then not a single penny of proceeds is going to flow from Ukraine at all. But okay, here's my point. If he had Kamala Harris sitting in the White House and did all this song and dance and hustling, the three-card Monty, and then Starmer whipped out an invitation from Chuck the King with sausage fingers, inviting her to a private dinner, it would be a deal done. Now you know why Starmer sent Labor people to try to turn the election in favor of Kamala Harris. Now, you are trying to hustle Donald Trump. Yeah. Like, if I could see through the hustle, what are the odds that Donald Trump is going to fall for it?
Did you see, Alex, at that point, and one last little point. For one, I think that invitation was an invitation to come to Britain so that we can assassinate you.
Yes, I expected that.
And yeah, so I don't expect Trump to leave the country and you notice how Trump took the letter, and he was like, huh, okay, I see what this is. You can almost see it on his face. He's like, oh, this is a great honor. Like, this is in Britain, and then he's like, and should I read it now? I mean, that was the best part. Should I read it now?
Tom, did you notice he also gave Starmer a compliment on his beautiful accent?
Yes.
That was like, I see what you're doing. Oh God, did I just drop an F-bomb? Yeah, I guess I did.
Yeah, it was two, by the way.
We've already dropped 3 F-bombs so far.
That's a new record for me to get.
How many F-bombs do we get on
YouTube? On YouTube, I mean, this is a family-friendly show, but if you have to say,
I'll say fornicate the next time.
All right. Well, hey,
all right. So, as this degrades now into an episode of South Park. Okay.
In the world of precious metals, trust is everything. It's key. And over the course of the last few weeks, I've gotten a chance to meet the good folks over at Pimbex, and I've got to say they have got great character, and they're someone that I can put my trust into. Now, Pimbex offers ultra-competitive prices, top-tier service, and fast and secure shipping. All the things that are important for gold and silver stackers. Thinking about a gold and silver IRA conversion, they've got you covered there too. And don't just take my word for it. Check out their top-tier third-party reviews and see why so many stackers have trusted Pimbex. And so for all of your gold and silver needs, head on over to Pimbex. That's PIMBEX.com. Link is in the description as well as on the screen here. Hey, Tom, really quick, I want to play a clip. This is from yesterday. This is Zelensky talking about effectively using his leadership in Ukraine as a bargaining chip to get Ukraine into NATO. So let's listen into this.
How can I put it? what's happening with the support to change me. It will not be easy because it is not enough to simply hold elections. You would need to prevent me from participating in the election, and it will be a bit more difficult. So they'll have to negotiate with me, and I said that I'm exchanging it for NATO membership, and then it means that I fulfilled my mission. There is NATO. It means I fulfilled my mission.
So there you go. He is weaponizing his leadership role to get NATO, get a NATO position for Ukraine. So
yeah, real quick, and then we should probably go to Martin. Two things. One, Europe never puts anything real on the table. They always offer you nothing for something in return. They always steal from you. Like, oh, we're going to take all of your Russian foreign exchange reserves, and then we're going to offer them back to you in exchange for you doing exactly what we want. Okay, that's nice. This is just another version of that. Actually, all of this, the Miller agreement, boots on the ground, all of it, and Zelensky, who cares if he's president or not? Like, trading Zelensky for Ukraine being in NATO, like that. That's a fair trade. Okay. How about I hand you my house and you'll give me your cat in return? That's a great deal. I'll take that. I mean, the unbelievable arrogance of these people is off the charts, and the delusion that they're even still, I don't know, viable in 2025 under these circumstances is breathtaking, to be honest with you.
Tom,
but
it's the Brits.
Kind of hilarious.
It's the Brits who care that Zelensky is president because he signed their dog shit agreement, 100-year partnership.
Right. Because they need the collateral, Alex, as you and I have talked about many, many times. This is all about collateral.
Yeah, let me get Martin's take here. Martin, what do you make of that clip we just saw? I mean, this is Tom, really painted a pretty accurate picture as to what the trade would look like. Zelensky for NATO membership for Ukraine. What do you make of those these leftist tactics from Zelensky?
I mean, look, it's absurd anyhow, but my sources long before, and there was a local journalist, Lyra, who I knew in Ukraine, and he came out and he tied Zelensky's funding to become president with the same guy funded, Hunter Biden, and then he basically said, look, if you just have to look at a timeline, I mean, this whole war was created by the West, and not Putin. And they just lie about absolutely everything. I mean, Zelensky stood up even the day before and said, we're going to rearm with nuclear weapons. That made the Daily Caller. And Trump, should pay attention to, I think he is paying more attention to this timeline because, I mean, I know quite a few people around him and I've gone back and forth, spoken actually with, RFK. I mean, I don't see anybody really has any real respect for Zelensky. I think they realized that he was now a plant. And I even have videos, which I did post on my site, of him on stage as a comedian before president. And he is making jokes about confiscating assets from Jews and Russians. What most people don't realize is that he married a Christian girl and his kids are baptized. All right. He was pretending not to be Jewish before the election because he was a neo-Nazi. This is why his hatred of Putin is unbelievable. But suddenly he becomes president and now he's Jewish. Friends of mine in Israel are basically saying he is no Jew. I mean, everything has just been plotted out. I mean, he won't run for election because he knows he wouldn't win. I mean, if your son was kidnapped off the street, sent to the front line, your house has been bombed, are you really going to be out there cheering Zelensky? I mean, it's like I said, only 13,000 people were dead before. And when he came to power, it's now 1.1 million and growing. The people there are not so bullish on him. And it's the Ukrainians that have all fled. They're listening to the propaganda from the press. Oh, he's a hero. He's this, he's that, whatever. You know, it's just nuts. But they want to take down Russia, period. And they think that they can. NATO was even trying to raise $100 billion before the election, and they called it to Trump-proof the war. I mean, this is it. This is like the old Roman Empire. Let's invade Russia and take all the spoils. And they really think, and as deranged as this may sound, but because they don't understand the economics, all right? But they think if they take Russia, they get those assets, then the European economy will be bigger than the United States, and the U.S. will be subservient to Europe. They don't even understand anything. The European model is like the old mercantile model. We just build stuff and sell it to somebody else. They keep their taxes very high. I mean, just Google it. The average net worth of a German is less than that of an Italian. All right. China has looked at the U.S. model and the European model. What are they doing? They're following the U.S. They're trying to build a consumer-based economy, Silk Road, etc. They're not going the way Europe was. And Europe is, I don't care how much money they get, they have to surrender this Marxist agenda that they all are on. And I don't see that happening. Our computer says that Russia, would actually win, and that Europe is going to fail for a third time.
And what happens when Europe fails, Martin? What's the outcome look like?
The U.S., basically you're looking at it breaking up. I mean, I met when they were forming the euro. They came to me, and I sat down. Okay, fine. This is how we create a currency. And I can tell you, they were saying, oh, everybody's going to pay the same interest rate, all that stuff. That would be fine if you consolidated the debts. But Kohl, who is the chancellor of Germany, he knew if he allowed the German people to vote on joining the euro, he would lose. And he even admitted he would lose 7-3. So he took Germany into the euro on an executive order. No vote, nothing. So he knew the Germans would be very upset about the debt. So he insisted no consolidation of the debt. And I warned them. I said, listen, this is going to fail. You don't understand what you're doing. Like Tom would know. I mean, as a trader, basically you bought the Deutschmark, you sold the Lira. Okay. Right. You just moved it from there to the bond markets. If I'm bullish Germany, bearish Italy, I just do it in the bonds. Right. And I told them, I said, fine, U.S. has a single interest rate for the feds, but all 50 states pay different rates depending upon their credit rating. Right. I was told at that meeting in 1998, we just have to get the euro through. We'll worry about the debts later. Here we are in 2025. They still have not consolidated the debts. This is why the euro has never been able to challenge the dollar. Nice. Because as a fund manager, okay, I can buy $10 billion worth of U.S. treasuries. Or Europe, let's see, who do I want? Germany, Italy, France. I still got to make the same decisions.
Martin, you've made this point many times over the years, and I've listened very carefully to it. You just said something I'd never heard before, or maybe I missed it in the past, which is that Cole took them into the euro via executive order.
Yeah,
that's the key. That's why they're so deathly afraid of AFD is not allowed to come anywhere close to the government, because at that point they would not, because they could pull Germany out of the euro by canceling the executive order.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of the things that they were pushing.
I think right. I for whatever reason, I don't. That was a subtle point that I'd missed all these years, and like. And the minute you said that, I'm like, oh, that's why the cordon sanitaire is so cannot be broken down. That's why it's outlived Merkel.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for that. I appreciate
there was they were never given the right to vote to join, yes or no.
I thought maybe it was an act of the Bundestag or something along those or something along those lines. I never really thought about it in terms of executive order.
Yeah, no, it wasn't really even argued. Or, in all honesty, I guess I can say now. The Bundesbank was against it. They were giving us all the minutes, all the meetings, because they're so everything. It's still on my old site from back then, but we were getting all the information from every meeting, all from the Bundesbank back then, because they were against this whole deal. And so it was just an executive order. That was it. And nobody.
Martin, sorry to interrupt. When was this decision made exactly? If you happen to know.
Well, the meeting was back in '98, late '98.
Was that around the same time when they assassinated the CEO of Deutsche Bank?
It may be. I'd have to look at the dates. But it was a few months. It was definitely in '98 before they launched the euro in '99.
Yeah, because he was now his name escapes me. Herrhausen, Alfred Herrhausen. Alfred Herrhausen was assassinated in 1989.
No, 98. You just said 89.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm dyslexic. Yes.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's what Cole did.
Right.
So
that's what they're afraid of. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Martin.
They're doing the same. They did the same thing in Romania. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's huge protests out there. I got a video of it. I put it on my blog today. I don't know if the news is even picking it up, but you're looking at, hundreds of thousands of people out there protesting in Romania against the rigged election there. I don't know what's on the TV, if it's even made the TV.
I don't think it has. The subtext to Kale and Georgescu is that they're doubling the airbase, the NATO airbase in Romania, to make it the biggest airbase in all of Europe, in order to point them directly at Crimea, because they still have designs of taking Crimea back, and there's no way that they can allow a populist to take over Crimea, to take over Romania, because he would put the kibosh on that immediately. So this is a series of what we're describing here, guys, is a series of rearguard actions of. They're losing control of this entire process at a strategic level, and all they can do now is 3-card Montes. We're trying to do this and not letting anybody know what we are planning on extending the war for as long as possible until we can ramp up our own production, create our own internal military industrial complex, and if we can at the same time shame Donald Trump into turning his back on the plucky Ukrainians. And I don't know about anybody else, but if you haven't seen the polls here in the United States since that meeting on Friday, like the American attitude towards Zelensky flipped overnight. Like it was one thing, earlier in the week. Oh yeah, maybe we should. No, there's 70% of Americans are now dead set against him and this whole thing, and they're backing Trump because you don't come into the White House and disrespect the president, even when your president is a mushroom sporifying in the White House, like Biden. You still don't do that. This whole thing screams yet another stupid play by Obama as well. That I think this is still all coordinated out of the shadow government brownstone in D.C. along with whatever's going on at GCHQ or 10 Downing Street or whatever you want to, whatever's going on in London. Like, this is a complete thing here because Obama's not going away. And your tell there is that, one, Hillary Clinton came out of the woodwork and started tweeting again for the first time in weeks. And Susan Rice had to go out there and defend herself out on MSNBC. And I think she even did part of the Sunday talk show circuit over the weekend. When you see them coming out like that, those people who you haven't seen hide nor hair of. But when somebody finally tried to finger Susan Rice and she came out to defend herself, and now everybody's asking, why does she still have a security clearance? Why does she still get to, have the Twitter account Ambassador Rice? She hasn't been ambassador to the UN in a decade. So,
I don't like the imagery of Susan Rice, Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, family friendly show. Sorry about that. But what else? Well, the last thing I'll say is, Christ, Danny, is that's hilarious, dude.
The thought is unkind.
Yeah, no, it really is. But
I don't think he'd want to anyhow.
What I'm gonna throw out here is that what Martin has said, what I'm going to bring this back. I'm bringing this back in. I meant what Martin has said, what Alex has said, all about the meeting itself being a setup of various times. I think Trump and Vance were setting Zelensky and everybody else up because I think the longer term goal is that Trump, the master of media and the master of the Overton window, is doing the slow reveal on Barack Obama and the shadow government, which is still operating behind the scenes. And I think that this is all coming down with the Epstein file thing, and we can play that game all day long. And something's rotten here. And there's a very, very high level media perception game that's being played. But Trump's got himself in hot water, and as I said earlier, I don't think he should take the king's invitation. And the fact that Zelensky goes and meets with the king in a tracksuit.
Oh yeah.
And then the king shows up in it was. That was a struggle session for Charles, the way I saw it. You work for us now because Zelensky is the face of the European Union's desire and the desired outcome, and forcing him to have a meeting, take a photo op without any of the regalia with Zelensky. As far as I was concerned, that was kind of a classic struggle session. And I don't know. So Charles is a very interesting figure. I don't see him lasting 6 months, by the way.
I want to take it to Alex now. Alex, I have a clip to show you. We can run this here really quick. Okay, so this was an attack on a big Russian oil refinery yesterday. We're gonna look at some of the damage they did here. Are these just acts of desperation here? Are they going to trigger a dirty bomb or continue doing stuff like this to force a decision out of Washington, to force military action onto Russia if they don't get if it doesn't appear that they're going to get what they want?
Well, it seems to me that they need a plan B and plan C and so forth, because the plan of destabilizing and regime changing Russia by using Ukraine as a proxy has failed. And so now I think that they're not going to stop, obviously. They're going to continue, but the way they're going to continue is through acts of terror. And I suspect that they're going to try also through drug trafficking, through narcotics, because for 2 centuries, one of Britain's main tools of foreign policy has been opium wars. And by the way, I suspect that this is why the United States is full of drugs and drug addicts. You realize now they're not just coming from Mexico, they're also coming from Canada, and that there are massive labs in Canada that are supplying these drugs. So I think that they're going to be preparing alternative strategies to keep striking at Russia in whatever way they can. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why in their 100-year partnership agreement, this provision in the secret appendix apparently is for Britain to take control of all of Ukraine's ports, not just Black Sea, but also the Sea of Azov. Because if you're gonna be smuggling weapons, drugs, and jihadis, you need to be able to control the flow of those things through the ports. So wrestling back Crimea away from the Russians, keeping control of the ports, are parts of Plan B, and then maybe that's even Plan C. Plan B is to then fight Russia to the last Romanian, and then probably to the last Pole and to the last Baltic state member, if there are any people left there, and so on and so forth. They're just not going to give up. They're not going to stop. This is for them. Let's put it this way: for the imperial cabal in London, this is existential. This is their model of governance. If they lose in Ukraine, it's game over. They can't lose in Ukraine. And you have many Western officials, high-level Western officials, who are actually on record stating this explicitly. If we lose in Ukraine, it's the end of Western hegemony. Boris Johnson said that exact statement. Andrzej Duda, or one of the Polish prime minister, I mean, maybe it wasn't Duda, maybe it was Morawiecki, I forget. Same statement. Right. A bunch of NATO generals and so forth. So they see this as completely existential. So, but the beauty of the whole thing is that the United States doing all the dirty work and heavy lifting is their last hope. Because if the Americans say no, they're done.
Ready?
Yeah.
On that front, top story at Zero Hedge right now, as of 12:12 Eastern Standard Time, Donald J. Trump on Truth Social responding to Zelensky saying that Zelensky said, "I think our relationship with the U.S. will continue because it's more than an occasional relationship. I believe that Ukraine has a strong enough partnership with the United States of America to keep aid flowing." And Trump warned in response, this was the worst statement that could have been made by Zelensky, and America will not put up with it for much longer. Double exclamation point. It is what I was saying. This guy does not want there to be peace. There it is. As long as he has America's backing, and Europe in the meeting they had with Zelensky stated flatly they cannot do the job without the U.S. Probably not a great statement to have been made in terms of the show of strength against Russia. What are they thinking? Polymarket's got, and then later in the article, Polymarket, odds that he cuts all military aid, and he's apparently having a meeting right now with his cabinet and staff that he's considering cutting off all military aid and canceling Biden aid to the Ukraine as of right now.
It has to be cut off. We are
Yes,
paying all salaries of the government employees and their pensions. Come on. I mean, of course, their equivalent of a Congress. Oh, yes, we're going to vote for Zelensky. We want him. Cut off the money, and you'll see how many of them run.
No,
look,
Martin,
he's right. This has been going on a long time.
Yes.
All right. It was back, honestly, for the 2000 election. I ended up in the middle of that attempted regime change. I was asked to put in $10 billion into Hermitage Capital. And that was
10 billion.
10 billion, yes. With Bill Browder and Eben Safra. And I refused. Boris Baryshnovsky even attempted to call me. All right. I said, I'm not involved in regime changes. I was promised I'd get 100 billion back. Edmund was a gold bug. And they were talking about all their gold, all the oil, diamond, everything from Russia would be going through the New York trading desks. Yeah. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm out. I'm not interested. And I was shown skids of $100 bills that were coming from the treasuries. And there was a magazine that even called it the money plane. I think it was the New York Magazine.
Yep.
I mean, I was shown in the basement. Look, we've got them. Edmund put on a paid for an IMF dinner and rented the entire National Gallery in Washington. I was invited to that. Every politician was there. I was even, everybody who was anybody. I was even talking to Paul Volcker at that one. And it was all like, come on, join us. We got the IMF in our pocket. I mean, I said, I'm sorry. I don't care who you have. My computer says, Russia, you're going to fail. But they were trying to rig the election of 2000, blackmailing Yeltsin to step down. And simultaneously, because they had blackmailed him, was using Bank of New York, the Russian communists filed an impeachment motion against Yeltsin. So he was getting it from the West and getting it from the communists. That's how Putin came in. Yeah. He turned to Putin because he wasn't a communist and he wasn't an oligarch. And his last words to him were, protect Russia. So this attempt at regime change, I was in the middle of it. And I'm talking, that's back in 1999. And I have firsthand knowledge of all that stuff.
Right.
So
I remember reading. I used to read Jim Sinclair's the stuff that Jim's used to smuggle out when you were in prison. I've been following that story, your story, Martin, for an awfully long time. I was hoping that this would come out because I know that Alex's first book was about Bill Browder and about the grand deception about what Browder actually.
We know each other about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is. There was a judge who was trying to protect me. All right, I posted this on the blog. All right, I finally got to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ordered him, what the hell's going on? All right. They then removed the case from that judge to another. And you look at my docket sheet, there's about 10 entries, all sealed. All right. Even Donald Trump couldn't move his case from one judge to another. How the hell did they do this? The only way they could do that was not the bankers, the government, NSA had to be involved. Had to be.
But you're talking about Southern District of New York.
Yes.
Well, SDNI is like an island unto itself. It's like a banana republic, a court system where the judges, the defense attorney, and the prosecutors are all members of the same clubs. They talk to each other, and they rig the game completely. This is why all the sensitive cases, particularly involving the banking system, all go to SDNI, and it's never in doubt that it's going to come out in favor of the banks.
You look at my case. Who was the USA on the transcript? Comey.
Wow.
Comey.
James Comey.
Well, and we had the Epstein file fiasco on Friday with the Southern District of New York refusing to. Is anybody surprised by
what's
this?
going on with that? Are they weaponizing the Epstein files, or are they negotiating with people on the list to?
I don't know. This is the Southern District of New York. Look, I caught the judges changed the transcripts, and I'm looking. And I said, I don't remember that. And then I spoke to one of the lawyers. I said, what the hell happened? He says, oh, they have a rule here. They can alter the transcript if they think it's irrelevant. I went through all the transcripts. I submitted an affidavit to accuse the judge. And I went through all this. Basically, I'm accusing the judge of a federal crime. All right. Hundreds of people came. I was like, what the hell is going on? And the lawyer said, it's you. You can't accuse a federal judge of committing a crime. I said, you all say they do it. Yeah, but you can't accuse them. He got scared. because there were so many people there. And acting as pro se, I don't have, if you're a lawyer, you have to give a list who you're going to call as a witness, and the judge has to approve. Pro se, I don't have to deal with that. So I'm a total wild card, and he got scared. So on the transcript, which has survived, he said, perhaps I put in a comma, perhaps I put in a dash. I don't recall changing anything material. I filed an appeal with the Second Circuit, which is just as corrupt. They lost it 3 times and said, now I'm beyond the time for appeal.
Of course.
There's a case, they even put it out. It's called U.S. versus Cicatello. All right. Page 97. Where there's a unique practice in the Southern District of New York, judges changing transcripts. And, we think they should stop it, but we're not sure if we have the power to tell a judge to obey the federal laws. This is what it says. It's just incredible. But the Southern District of New York is the most corrupt in the country. When I was charged there, my lawyer said, oh, shit. I said, what's the problem? And he says, oh, you don't understand. Southern District of New York changes, practices law differently than anywhere else. Boy, did I find out. And Trump has found out. That's New York. I mean, it's just.
I think it's deliberately. I think that's not even a terribly. It's kind of like keen grasp of the obvious, but it's deliberately made that way because they got Wall Street there, and they need a court system that they can completely control.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
and I wonder
they have impunity by design.
Yeah, I asked one of the lawyers. They said, "How come none of the bankers ever get charged here?" His response: "I swear to God, you don't shit where you eat."
That's right. Mm-hmm. Family-friendly show.
We're long past that by now.
I know. I'm just bringing it up again. The what I find interesting with this whole Epstein file fiasco is that I wonder how much of a game is being played between Bondi, Trump, SDNY, the Epstein files, and everything else. Whether she just got played, are they working? Are they using the Epstein files as a means by which to finally break this thing wide open? I don't know, but I'm just gonna you got something to say, Alex?
Go ahead, Alex.
I don't have. I'm just going to I have like 3 or 4 different.
Look, I think that Epstein files are extremely valuable as a policy tool at this point. Right. Donald Trump and his people have taken on the most powerful people in the world. They're going to have to use some of these powerful people against other powerful people. So they're going to have to probably incentivize some of them to turn against the other ones. If they open it all into the public, then they've lost that weapon. They no longer have that ammunition. So I think this is why they're playing the game with it.
Oh, I agree.
Let me explain one thing about Epstein. I was warned a long time ago. Be careful. They will try to use women to get into you. All right. And there's no way this guy was a pedophile. If you're a pedophile, you don't brag it to everybody in the world. And certainly, not all these leaders. The point is you're bringing in not guys from the local pub. You're bringing in, basically, princes and Clinton, the heads. Why? Because you get them on some sort of video. Now it's like you will do what I want or this comes out. I mean, this is what J. Edgar Hoover used to do. He used to come in and say, gee, this is what we found out. If we found out, your opponent could, and, oh, well, thank you very much for informing me. What is it you want? That's the way he played it.
Now, I suspect that what the way they got these guys this way is like, I always go back to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Why was McMurphy in why was he was in jail and then wound up in the United States, is because he was charged with statutory rape. And he said, well, she said she was, she was really 15, but she said she was 18 and she was very willing. Doctor, I had to practically keep the sew in my pants shut. They probably played that game with these guys. Oh no, they're 19 years old. And can you really, but they were really 17 and then they were in the wrong jurisdiction and then blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure that's the game that they played with these guys.
Yeah, look,
ultimately.
I don't think you or I would be able to tell the difference between a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old.
Bingo.
And the other question is, the legal age is 16 in the UK, not 18. So why would you even do this on an island unless you're deliberately trying to make it illegal?
Right.
You could have done this on one of the British ones and 16 would be fine.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just, there's just something, this is the way it goes, the way they play it. I can tell you that, go look at the Elliot Spritzer deal. All right. He took down the head of AIG. They were feeding him all the information. All right. Why? Because he wouldn't write the insurance for the mortgage-backed securities for Goldman Sachs. So after he takes him down and he has to resign from AIG, then AIG suddenly opens up and writes everything for Goldman. But then he thought he's all powerful and Spritzer's going to now clean up Wall Street. He turned against Wall Street. All of a sudden, what happens? Oh, you paid a hooker. Here's the check. And he has to step down. I mean, look, they've been playing this game for a long, long time. I was warned about it from, early on. Be careful. This is what they do. Thank you. Any time there was a good-looking girl that even came remotely close to me, I step back. Yeah, what is it you want? I don't know. I was coming back from London, and my assistant went to the bathroom, and then I'm standing out by the curb waiting for the limo guy to come, and standing next to me is a tall, good-looking black girl, short leather skirt, stiletto heels, talking to me. Oh, geez, so do you go to London often? Blah, blah, blah. I'm just being polite. I'm waiting for the limo to come. All right. My assistant comes out. We get in the car, and she says, boy, I can't allow you to leave you alone for 5 minutes. You're talking to supermodels. I said, well, what are you talking about? I thought she was a hooker. That's Naomi Campbell. I said, oh, okay. And then I find out Naomi Campbell was part of Epstein. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just, you don't know. You just don't know what the heck's going on with any of this stuff. I heard that she was a friend of Epstein's or whatever, something. I don't know to what extent she was involved or not, but I found it very curious.
So do you guys think we're actually going to get any reveal coming out of the Epstein files? Alex, you said we might get a limited reveal and kind of like weaponize a portion of the list to get some of those high-powered guys to
I suspect,
guys. But Tom and Martin,
I suspect that some people will be able to buy their redemption.
So they're probably taking the time to kind of negotiate the terms with some of these people on the black book. Tom, Martin, how do you guys see it?
Correct. That's what they do.
What I would say is we have to give Bondi a little bit of time here because there's a lot of names to go through. There's a lot of staff that she's got to put in place. Like the fact that the Cernoviches and company all want like the list thrown out there on day one is just dumb because this is not there's a lot that has to be done here, and especially if you're going to impanel a grand jury. This takes time. It's all just so much of this is now turned into, okay, who's saying what, when, where, how, and why in order to, I'm over all of it. Like, will something come out? Most likely. I think Alex's scenario is probably the most logical. Look, some people are going to buy their freedom. Other people are going to turn. Other people are going to be thrown out as red meat, and what's really important is that in the end, that the systemic stuff and the real, I think the goal here, and this is my read on Trump, he's going after Obama, but he's got to slow roll the whole process to turn the people against Obama in the court of public opinion so that he can make that case. This has got to be built over time, and otherwise he's going to. We're well past the reach for the boob too early on prom night, and we're going to have and he's going to lose operational tempo. I think that's where that's where we are. And I think Epstein is probably part of the stepping stone process. This blow up with Zelensky was clearly, coordinated. And I think that there's a lot of these things that we're going to start to watch the next phase of these operations play themselves out. But I think he's planning for, a full attack on Obama. And I think he told him that at Jimmy Carter's funeral.
I see.
Flat out.
Well, Marty, I have a question for you from my paying members over at Substack. They said that this is from Grisha, and their question is, Martin, you said recently that it will be a bond market bust this time, and the escaping capital will go into the stock market. It has to go somewhere, you said. Martin, aren't they all bubbles that will be flooding into gold and silver this time? The only real safe places now, as seems to be doing already. And I think you may have already answered a portion of this already, but go ahead, Martin.
Gold is too small of a market to absorb everything. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of these people just, they turn it almost into a religion. All right. If you just take, okay, fine, the national debt was $1 trillion. In 1980, gold was at 875. The national debt's at 35 trillion. If gold really responded on a proportional basis, it should be $30,000. All right, it's not. All right, if you just look at the German hyperinflation when it collapsed, they started a new currency in 1925, and was backed by real estate. That's what makes the transition. It's all tangible assets. It's not just gold. So it's companies with physical assets, real estate, art, things of this nature. It's not just gold. Gold is more of a international, something you can, it's the same thing in China as it is here. So it has a mobility to it. Okay, versus a piece of art per se, or land that you've got in Chicago or Florida or wherever. They can't move that. It's not a movable asset. So that's the advantage of gold. But capital will move into the private sector, et cetera. I mean, back in the 1980s, I got kind of blamed for starting the takeover boom, but it was just that everybody was so psychologically told that, the stock market's evil, the bond market's where you should be, trust government. And the low in the book value of the Dow actually took place in 1977. And I did advise most of the takeover boys. I knew Alan Bond, et cetera, all those guys. And just looked at it and said, look, the company, we could buy it, sell its assets, and triple our money. Is the stock overvalued? And that's why the Dow went from like 1,000 to 6,000 real fast. Mm-hmm. It was just psychologically, look, that I remember that from my father. Stocks are kind of evil and speculating, good old treasuries, the government you got to trust. That was the attitude coming out of the Great Depression. It finally gave way in the 70s, but that's really the way it was.
Just to add on to that, I agree with Martin. It's a tangible assets market across the board. I think we're gonna see a commodity. It depends on what Trump did. Trump is going to, if he's like bring this amount of capital into the country. Let's talk about like the gold visas as a perfect example.
Right.
If Lutnick is not lying here and he's talking about 250,000 people wanting to do this, this is a $1.25 trillion. The the money's not going to all flow into gold. Obviously, it's going to flow into starting new businesses. It's going to flow into real estate. It's going to flow to where there's undervalued assets. And where are the most undervalued assets in the world right now? Raw commodities across the board, because they've been beaten down through financial repression during years of zero bound interest rates. And now that we're in a reasonable rate environment, now we have to get some kind of, I think we're going to have to get some kind of, we're going to get a real commodity boom. Like you look at like oil majors, they're trading, even when oil majors right now are really interesting. I'm not recommending them, just as an interesting point. They're posting excellent profits, trading PDEs of 4 to 5, or even an expensive one 7, and yet oil's at $73 a barrel. It's not at 120. It's at 7. It's range bound. It's at the lower end of its trading range, and yet, the oil majors are doing well because and so I think their stocks are I think they're criminally undervalued if you really stop to look at it from that perspective. I think the interesting part about gold is going to be we're going to watch governments move. We're already watching them move towards gold as opposed to away from it. And so if gold is going to reach these lofty heights that, a lot of the religious, I call them the gold only bugs because they hate Bitcoin and they hate everything else. So those guys, it's like the Peter Schiffs of the world, like they're going to miss that it's going to be a bunch of things. And what's going to send gold to much higher heights is governments wanting to offset the liabilities on their balance sheets by acquiring real assets. And if we're moving into a less globalized world with more capital controls, tariff walls, and everything else, China, Russia, the United States, and the rest of them, and everybody puts up capital controls, people are going to be scrambling for gold in order to be able to undergird their trade and undergird their national balance sheets. And that's where, but I don't think we're hitting I don't think it's going to go anywhere close to some of the numbers that have been thrown out there. I think it's going to be a very interesting negotiated settlement of the price of gold relative to the leverage of national balance sheets or the global balance sheet.
You also have the main reason you have all these countries, turning to gold was simply BRICS. When they put in the sanctions against Russia, that sent off a red flag. Hey, if you don't do what Blinken tells you, we can remove you. And the idiot even threatened China. You help Russia and we'll remove you from SWIFT. Oh, really? Okay, let's see. Let's crank up our system. So, the gold bugs have to understand. They're not buying gold because they think it's going to go up. They're not investors. And they don't give a shit if it goes down. All right. It's neutral. All right. You've got China and Japan dumping euro debt. They know what's coming. All right. And they don't want to have all dollars because, okay, fine. What happens if there's a geopolitical issue with the United States? All right. So gold is neutral. It's not that I'm not buying it because I think it's going to double in price. They're not a speculator. All right. I mean, I deal with a lot of the central banks. I mean, this is not, that question never even comes up. Gee, you think we should buy some gold? It might go up. I've never heard that from a central bank ever. And it's just, it's geopolitical. That's the whole issue with gold. That's why all the gold right now, you're seeing it leaving London and Switzerland. The same thing happened for World War I and World War II. U.S. ended up with 76% of the world's official gold reserves at the end of World War II. That's what made the dollar the reserve. Germany finally took some back. France took some of their gold back in 1971. But, a lot of it is stored in, even not Fort Knox, but actually in the New York Fed.
Mariner building.
Yeah, it's stored there for other countries. So it's, look, a lot of these gold bugs, they just constantly make it a religion type thing. And that's not the issue.
And they've been at it for like 20 years.
Longer.
Longer.
No. But here's a question from Martin, from me. Do you think that the British government would be able to drive the interest rates on the gilts towards zero? Do you
They're
think
going to
that they
wipe
will
out.
be able to do this? No.
I don't think so. I mean, if they do so, you're only going to, cause
The pound to
tremendous.
explode.
I mean, we're showing the pound's going to go down anyhow, but you're wiping out the pension funds, etc. And this is, I mean, I warned the ECB. You go negative back in 2014, you're going to wipe out the bonds. You're going to, the banks and pension funds, and because they have these regulations that, the reserves must be in government bonds. And then in Europe, they even made it worse. Oh, you have to be politically correct. So you have to have a proportion of everybody. Because
I think that maybe that's why they want to freeze all the pensioners, literally.
Oh, yeah.
They get rid of them that way. So, the pension fund problem solved.
This is...
It's a huge problem.
Martin made these points during COVID. I remember reading your blog back then, and which is that they're clearly trying to get rid of their unfunded liabilities. And I think that what they really want to do right now, and part of this war in Ukraine mindset that they've got in Europe, it's not even that they want the war per se. They need the threat of the war in order to justify the tremendous expansion of their balance sheet, and then eventually use all of that as some form of excuse to default on everything. George Soros has given this scheme away ages ago. Default on everything, issue perpetual debt, and start clean. But they can't do that if Russia, China, and the United States survive. So you've got to get them into a conflict where they destroy each other. And then Europe is the one place that isn't, quote unquote, bombed this time. And they become the first ones to rebuild after the war is over. And I think that's their plan. I think that plan is a stupid plan, but I think that's their plan.
Which is the reverse of World War II, where all the capital came here into the United States because we weren't bombed like Europe was.
Right.
Yeah, and
they're literally trying to get us involved in a war with Russia. Because
then it would be the British and the European banks that would be loaning you money for reconstruction and development afterwards, and then you would be owing that to them forever.
Well, and the other thing is, if they default on the existing obligations, who's going to trust them if there's anybody else where they can send their money, where you have to be the most trusted person on the table, right? At the table, even if you're fundamentally, objectively untrustworthy, but everybody else is worse off than you are.
You can do that if you kill everybody else at the table. If you kill everybody else at the table, then you're the most trusted person left.
Well, I've played plenty of these games where I've played a de minimis strategy in order to win with three troops on the board, and everybody else had none. I've done that, and nobody likes it, and it's not fun. But that's Europe's strategy. I'm dead serious when I say this, and they've made it abundantly clear over and over again. So that I think that's what their strategy is. That's their only
I've won't say who, but I've been in London and after you get a few drinks in them, they go, the British Empire still exists, and
we know.
We're the all roads lead to London boys over here. Yeah.
And I've been in Tokyo and the same thing. They, after they get a few drinks in them, the emperor's still God. Yes, okay, fine.
Interesting.
These old things just they don't fade off into the sunset. Europe basically still thinks that the United States is this upstart, and they're going to get everything back.
Are we still in Pax Britannica?
I don't think so, but they try to pull the strings on pretty much everything at this stage in the game.
What I'd say is they still think that maybe they still perceive that it's
Yes.
Pax Britannica with us as proxy.
Yeah. It's, it's just go send the Americans in. They'll go pay for everything. They're stupid. And that's basically the way it's been played.
Well, Winston Churchill said, American brawn for British brains.
Mm-hmm.
But if they prevail, we're going to have Tax Britannica with a T, not a P.
Like here, well, what's really funny is that, and this is where I'm going to out myself. Italians have the highest average IQ in all of Europe, and all the good ones came over here. Like, I think they're forgetting the fact that there's an awful lot of smart Europeans that left and came over here, and it's not like we're not a former British penal colony anymore, folks. Let's just
they invented pizza in the United States.
That's
when
right.
I was 13, I went to Europe with my family. I finally saw a sign that said pizza in Naples. I said, "Oh wow!" It was a cracker with some tomato sauce placed.
That's the old traditional. That's the old traditional pizza. But that kind of sucks. It kind of lets you down.
Even maybe about 5 years ago, I was in Venice and I asked, "Can I have a pepperoni pizza?" They looked at me like I was strange. And they said, "Well, maybe we could put some salami on it or something for you." I said, "You guys need to know how to become Italian."
I was going to say, I'm from New York. I grew up in upstate New York, and to this day, I'm like, I can't get a decent bagel and I can't get a decent pizza anywhere in the world. It's just so hard. And
I think that the pizza, the Neapolitan pizza, as we think of it today, goes back to maybe 1940s, 1950s when they started studying actually the dough. That's like a whole science about how to make the dough properly,
right?
So that you get. And before that was this thing
and the quality of the wheat and there's I actually have a place. I live in North Florida. I don't know, you guys know.
Yeah.
I live north of Gainesville, and there's a place actually in a town called Alachua that actually uses Italian semolina style pasta flour for their pizza. Their pizza is actually halfway decent.
You can buy it off Amazon, Tom. It's on Amazon. I mean, I get it all the time.
I know they actually grind. They actually grind their own. Literally, they actually grind their own. It's actually really quite cool, and they sell their own. It's actually good. It's actually quite good, but it's still not.
Look, good. This is the way most of the foods, sushi. That was for the poor man food because it just has a tiny little piece of fish in the middle of all the rice.
Right.
The rich guy could eat sashimi. With England, it was shepherd's pie. It's usually the poor man's food that has become famous.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever heard of what a Welsh rabbit is. It's no,
like a rat.
The Welsh were too poor for a rabbit, so a Welsh rabbit is a grilled cheese sandwich. You see this all over the place.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, no, poor man's food is everywhere. Yeah, no, down here in the South, it's biscuits and gravy, right? Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I know, Alex, you have to jump in a bit, so I'm going to let you get the last word here. Anything else you want to talk about here, Alex, before you dip out that we didn't get to?
Yeah, it's just how do you stop it? Okay, sorry. My last word. Pray for Trump, pray for Putin. A lot rides on those two people surviving.
Very true.
What about you, Tom? Any last parting words?
I'm going to echo Alex at this point. I think it's very clear that those two men have a sense of what the real. I'm actually very surprised that Trump has the kind of sense that he's showing in this administration. I was not expecting it. And the minute he sent Elon Musk after Keir Starmer, which I've said before, was eye-opening to me. And I'll be honest with you, I've been in like catch-up mode for the last month and a half, watching this play out and go, oh my God, they do get it. So that's a good sign, folks. It's a much better sign than what we thought we were getting on election night. So I'm very happy with Trump 2.0.
Yeah.
What about you, Martin?
Well, I was there for Trump 1.0 and 2.0. And up to 1999, they would send me in to meet people who wanted to run for president and to explain the world economy and how it really worked. And then in 99, they asked me to go down to meet with Bush Jr. And they said, oh, this one's different. He's really stupid. And I was like totally shocked. And I said, why would you make somebody stupid, president? And he says, he's got the name and we can win. I was asked to be part of that administration if I would take the chief economic advisor in the White House. I said, no, I'm not going to give up my company for this. So I was there. I know they picked Cheney. They picked Bush. Bush didn't pick anything. Okay. They picked the whole cabinet. When Trump went in, that's what they did to him. Oh, you don't know. We have to give, you're not a politician. And they sold this idea, we need people with experience, and they stuffed his cabinet with people like John Bolton. All right. Mm-hmm. This is why Trump picked his cabinet before he even got to Washington.
That's right. That
was a shot across the bow. And all the people that he has in there are not from Washington. Okay. And you hear the leftist press, oh, they don't have experience. You can't get somebody from the deep state who's going to basically drain the swamp. It's not going to happen. You need people from the outside. And like I've said on some podcasts, if you got a small business, you go to the bank and they want to see your financials. You can't say, well, here, I did them. You don't have an accountant? Well, I saved the money here. Just use mine. That's not going to fly. It's online, Rumsfeld, the day before 9/11. There's $2.3 trillion missing just in that annual budget of the Pentagon. And he said, oh, we'll start an investigation. This is unbelievable. And then the plane supposedly hit the very room with all the documents. Right. You're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars here that God knows where it goes. U.S. aid, I've dealt with Washington for like 40 years, and it was always said that's the slush fund of the CIA. That was common knowledge in D.C. I think Trump, all the press is against them because they're bought and paid for. He understands that now. He understands the game. I think even General Flynn did a documentary, and even he said the first time in, Trump was naive. Now he knows how it works. And so that's what you're seeing, Tom. So it is real. And I do know Luna. I've been to lunch with her. She's actually my local congresswoman.
Right.
That he put in charge of all the conspiracy theories and gathering everything there. And I've spoken to RFK. He really was against the war.
Why don't they reveal the RFK and JFK files at least? Why are they kind of trying to massage it?
I think I think it leads directly to the CIA. I bumped into Richard Nixon after he had left office on the beach in Long Beach Island. And I was shocked that he wasn't surrounded by a whole bunch of Secret Service people. And went back, and you can Google it. Richard Nixon declined Secret Service protection after he left office. Why? There was a tape that they called a smoking gun. Okay. And they played it that he was trying to blackmail the CIA. All he said on that tape was, I know who killed JFK, to the head of the CIA in his office. RFK believes that they took out his family. Just look on Wikipedia, you'll find Project Northwoods. They proposed to Kennedy to kill Americans, to create a false flag to justify invading Cuba. He rejected it. He rejected that. He was against Vietnam. He took him out. It's now coming out with some of the documents. They haven't released everything yet, but they're saying it appears that the shooter of Trump did not act alone. Surprise. And the second one, he's a felon. He drives from North Carolina to Florida, gets a gun somehow down here with all the numbers, scratched off. Who gave it to him?
Right.
A lot of questions. He tries to run so they can get to kill him. So they put him in prison, and then what's the DOJ say? Oh, we want a suspended trial for a long time. Sixth Amendment says you have a speedy trial right. He'll probably die in prison or something. I mean, this is the nonsense. With Epstein, they threw me there. I was in like the cell across from where he died. All right, they put me in with the terrorists from the First World Trade Center. Told my family I was missing. I'm not there. My lawyers are going, well, where the hell did he go? And then the judge orders them to find me. And it was like a comedy show. Oh, we found him. He was down there with the terrorists. We don't know how he got there. I'm in with the terrorists from the First World Trade Center. If you don't know I'm in there, who the hell is in there? I mean, come on. And I can tell you they drew the World Trade Center on the wall of their cell with planes going into it. And this is the first crew. They came down, took pictures, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's why Homeland Security, what did they say? Without specific, we need to create the Homeland Security because some agencies had information but didn't share it. I'd like to see them release those pictures of 9/11 from the first terrorists. Mm. And their lawyer, Lynn Stewart, they prosecuted her for passing notes to them. Yep. She went to prison. That's the Southern District of New York. So, I mean, look, they've been playing games with all this stuff all the time. And there's nothing, whatever they say, you just can't believe it anymore. You just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Great way to close things off here, Marty. Guys, thank you so much for taking part in the panel. This is probably my favorite podcast I've ever recorded, by the way. So thank you guys for coming on. Alex, we'll go around. We'll give out our socials. Alex, where can people find you if they want to hear and see more of you?
At Naked Hedgie on X, a newsletter for investors, iSystem Trend Compass, personal Substack, Alex Krainer's Substack.
All right, Tom.
That's it.
You can find me on X at TFL1728. The worst version of me will show up every day, I guarantee. And then, of course, you can sign up over at for the Patreon over Patreon/Gold Goats and Guns for the newsletter, the market reports, and all that. And of course, there's a blog and the podcast at goldgoatsandguns.com.
All right, Marty.
It's just go to armstrongeconomics.com and that basically will lead you off to anything else that you want, but we try to keep it open. We do have offices everywhere from China to Middle East, so we're not blocked. So we try to keep it open for a global source for people.
Okay, we'll have the links to all those links down below in the description box. So be sure to check them out, guys. If you're interested, if you enjoyed this podcast as much as I did, remember to hit that like and subscribe so you don't miss another one of these. Again, this was my favorite podcast. So let me know what you thought. We covered a whole host of topics, kicking it off with the Ukraine stuff, moving over to Epstein and a bunch of other stuff as well. Let me know what you enjoyed most out of this conversation. Drop me a comment down below. And if you agreed or disagreed, do let me know. I do read the comments. So with all that said, thank you guys for watching, and also check us out here on Substack. I should have the link somewhere on the screen, capitalcosm.substack.com, where you can get early access, ad-free versions, and uncensored versions of all of my videos that warrant it. This one might warrant it. I'll see if I can include this many F-bombs. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye, y'all.
Great
Bye.
to see you, gents.
Thank you.